Okay guys, so in this video we are going to talk about event sourcing. So let's get into it. So in this video we will cover what event sourcing is, how is this different from traditional storage, what are some of the benefits and what are some of the downsides. So the event sourcing comes from the idea that if you have tracked all of the state changes in a system and save a record of that state change, you can actually recreate any state. What does that mean? Well, it basically means that in traditional applications, what you would have is, say, something like an order. And an order has some associated information with it, with different data and fields and stuff of that nature. And what you usually do is that if somebody updates an order, you read that from the database, you update the order, and then you save it back down to the database and stuff of that nature. But what the event sourcing is about is that when you make an update or you create something or something of that nature, you create an event that holds the change that you want to make to the model. So instead of reading the order from the database, what you're going to do is that, and doing the update, right, you're going to create a update event and you're going to run that through the order so that it performs the update, and then you're going to save the event itself so that you have a record of what change you just made. Why this is powerful is because it allows you to basically remember all the things that have changed in the order. Just think about it. What happens if you needed to know what the order that you updated, what state was it in at a given point in time? If you have a traditional application, it's very difficult for you to know that, because when you update something, it's updated. There's not really much you can't go back in time and remember how the model looked in a previous state, but with event sourcing you can. So some of the benefits of event sourcing is that you get a lot of traceability, and traceability means basically that you can see you're as long as you're storing the events, you can know where everything is happening. You can know what has happened and what is basically, well, I can't describe it in a better way than to say that it allows you to remember every change that has ever happened in your system. And that gives, as I said, amazing traceability. Now, why would you want traceability? I'll show you an example as to why that is in just a moment, but let's just talk about what's not so good about event sourcing. So what's not good about event sourcing is that you need to store more data. In other words, instead of just storing the order, you're going to have to store all the events that are happening as well in order to do that, basically. But I want to tell you right now, storage is cheap. I think that the benefits of event sourcing vastly outweigh the downside of having to store a little bit more data. And another thing that I've found is that when you kind of have to think more about things when you do event sourcing for certain things. So if you have a model that you need to update, for example, let's say that you wanted to change a field on your order to be a different name or something like that. That's a little bit trickier to do in event sourcing than it is to do in a traditional migration type of situation where a basically how you usually do it. And then there is a little bit more code, because now you don't just update the order, you have to create events as well on top of having an order. But let's look at an example that I hope will illustrate how powerful event sourcing is. So here I have my very basic login form. I'm going to log in like this. Here's my administrative panel. Let's just pretend that this is an internal tool with a list of orders. I can create an order, and this history is what I'm interested in right now. So what just happened is that I logged into the system, and my history here shows that, all right, there's an event called attempted login. It doesn't have any data because I'm not storing anything, basically, or I'm not showing it in this scenario. I can show whatever I want, but right now I'm not storing it. Oh, sorry, I'm not showing it. And then I had a successful login. Okay, that's semi-useful. But let's look at creating an order. So let's do foo bar, something like that, and click it, and here we are. This is what I want. So here we see now that in the table there's an ID, there's a first name, last name, email, confirmed, and there's a confirm order option over here. This is what I want. So now I'm rendering out the history of all the things that has happened on this administrative interface. So I am logging out that there was a create order event that holds the order ID, as you can see up here. And then there was an update first name, which holds the value of first name, which is foo, which is this value here, last name, email, and if I click confirm, ta-da, another event that sets the state of the order to confirmed. Now, if you are following along with these events, I can recreate this state whenever I want. If I were to rerun these events in the same order over this model, that our fresh model, I could recreate this entire structure. So let's look at the code level, what's actually happening. So we have this administrative panel, which is, I'll just really quickly scroll through the code and you can pause the video if you want to look closer on like the HTML and some of this stuff. This is the login page we saw earlier. Here's some basic CSS. And here's an order. Awesome. Here's my server, which is just a basic Express server with a MongoDB instance. We're using Mongoose for this. I will touch on refresh in just a moment. And here's the application itself. We are going to have a much more in-depth look at this in just a moment, but I just wanted to kind of give you some indicator of what we're actually going to talk about. And then we have these two. So let's look at the order. So the order model that we saw earlier, which is, this is the thing that you saw in the table. This thing here, that's the data you're seeing there. It has an order ID, a first name, a last name, and an is confirmed that defaults to false, and then you have an email. That's our entire model, dirt simple model. Let's look at the event names. So just to show you, I have some strings here to just label the different events. So attempted login, successful login, create order, update, customer ID, first name, last name, yada 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 yada. There's tons of events here basically with the just labels basically. And let's look at the model for a login event. And a login event just has a type and a timestamp. That's easy peasy. Order event has an order ID, a type, a timestamp, and this data attribute you saw earlier. So basically I'm just a little bit lazy here, so I create this generic object that can hold any value, so I can like reuse this model in a more generic fashion, so I don't have to create one model for every type I want to declare. But you can, in a type language, you could make this a little bit nicer. Anywho, let's look at the index. So here I'm importing my events and my names. So I have a higher order function that simply takes in a type and returns a function that is going to instantiate a login event. Another higher order function that takes in a type, returns a function that expects the data object, basically just an object as input, where we're going to grab the order ID and is confirmed. And basically what we want to do now is that we want to copy that object over and remove the order ID, because hey, we don't want the order ID to be on the data property we saw earlier. We want to put that one level up so it's on the actual model instead of on the internal data object on our model, this event model I mean. And here we just create all of the events, and then we export them. All right, cool. So let's look at the app, because this is where the magic is happening. So we have some helper functions here, not so interesting. EGS is what we use for rendering, and then we have a body parser in order to get the URL encoding so we can post some stuff. We have static assets that are being loaded from public, which is this stuff here. And then we have the root we saw earlier, which is basically the login page, which is, yeah, it's just that file. And then when we post the /login, what's going to happen is that this is basically what happens. So we create an attempted login with the username of the post. So you grab the username and store the username on that attempted login, and then we just save that to the database. Easy peasy. Same thing for successful logging. As you can imagine, this is not really production level stuff. I just wanted to illustrate that because I'm going to show you something later that you may get you into the idea that there's no other way to do event sourcing. This is you can do it this way as well, but the next thing I'm going to show you is the way that I've been taught how to do it and the way I recommend you do this. Anywho, so here we go to /admin, and so we go and grab all the order events, all the login events. We concatenate those together and sort them by date. Then we grab the orders, all the orders, or an empty array if there are none, and then we simply render those to the page for the admin panel. Then we have confirm, which was that link you saw earlier, where we create a confirmed order event, where we store the order ID, and that basically just the property is confirmed, is set to true. So when we create this event, it holds the necessary information in order to register that the order is going to be updated and set to is confirmed. And then we have this magic function here, save events. This is the moneymaker. We're going to look at that in just a moment. So it just takes an array of events and runs them through some magic. Let's look at that in a moment. And then we have /order to just get the order page, which was the page that we created our order on. And here we have something a little bit different. So we create an order event, and when we have created that order event, we simply basically this event here is going to create the order that we want with this ID, and then we simply wait until we save that event to the database so that we get a instance of the order, because if we start running updates without having an order, the thing is, our code is going to break. So now we have an order, we create an update first name event, update last name event, and update email, add that to an array, and then we save all the events, and then we redirect back to the admin. Awesome. Now let's go and look at this save events thing. What's going on here? Save events, it's actually this reducer here, and for some reason, there it is. There we are. So if you haven't noticed this yet, down here I have a little bit of log output which ran when we created our event. So first we are trying to apply create order, and then we successfully created the order, and then we did an update to first name and it was successful, and then last name and that was successful. And basically what this is just a reducer that is catering to this function. This is the thing that we're importing, right? This is our array of events. So we create we store a variable that's going to hold the order, and then we loop through all of the events, and we write to the database. We basically create basically that's what we do. We loop through and we create the different events. We save those to the database and we update the order in simultaneously, and then we return whatever is being basically reduce is going to return an order. So every time an event is being applied to the model, we then save the event and the model, and we return the model. So we have the updated order all the time. And what's happening here is that if you have multiple events, they are all going to run in sequence, and you're going to be left with the finished order model. And then finally we simply return that order, right? So here we are, the reduce function. Without further ado, we get the order events, and if the order event is of type create order, we do a little special thing. We create a new instance of the model that we want, where we set the order ID. We save the order event so that we remember that, hey, we have an event that was create order. Then we save the order. Finally, we log out that we were successful, and then we return the order. If it's not create order, if it's just an update, this is what we're going to do. We're going to find the order, and then we have our switch here, and it's fairly elegant. All we need to look at is the type and check, okay, is it an update to the email? Okay, we update the email. If it's update first name, we do first name, last name is confirmed, etc, etc, etc. I hope this is fairly straightforward. And then we have the default case. So if for some reason we don't have a type an event if there's an event coming in to our pipeline that doesn't match any of our cases, we simply log out that there's an issue and we ignore it, and we go on with our day. Then finally we save the order event, we save the order, and we log out that we were successful with applying this event, and then we return the saved order. What this allows us to do, you may recognize this if you're from React land. This is very Flux-like, I would say. It's very, very Flux-like, and I absolutely love it. Let's have a look at something that is truly powerful. So here I have my nice little instance of an order, right? This thing here. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that I go to my database and somebody makes a mistake with the orders. And we do that. I just lost my data. we don't have the order anymore. But we do have the events. Let's have a look at that. Let's examine that for a moment. Here's my refresh script. So what my refresh script is going to do is that it's going to connect to my database. It has a function called refresh, so it's going to delete all the orders just to be sure. I could just run this as I wanted if I wanted to refresh the whole database. And then I am going to grab all the order events, and then I'm going to run all of my events, and then I'm going to disconnect from my server. Let's see what happens. Sorry, well, refresh, that's the one I want. Yes, good. Bam. Let's do that. Refresh, and ta-da! We have all our data back. It's all good in the neighborhood again, and it's, as you can see, we're back to the state we were previously. This is event sourcing. As long as you have the events, you can recreate your entire database whenever you want, or rather the models that you had. And that's good for security purposes, but it's also very useful from a business perspective because you're saving your data at every step along the way, which means that you have a timeline. You can know what your system, which state the system was at any given point in time. You can go back several years and see how many orders did I have that were in the confirmed state on that date, or how many were pending. There's tons of stuff that you can use this for. So hopefully I have piqued your interest about event sourcing, and have a great day.